It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
And welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Breakfast. You know what we talk about because you're pretty interested in real estate, and we do it 7 days a week, of course, as heard on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Amazon. And how hard is buying in Sydney right now, and how many people have decided just to alleviate that whole process, that whole nightmare of trying to buy a property in Sydney, and have decided to move to Melbourne? Well, just ask Emma and Shamir, who Domain ran a story on last week. And in the story, they were saying that they are renting or were renting a 2-bedroom apartment in Sydney's CBD, $800 a week, describing it as very expensive, all the while trying very hard to save for their own property. But the rent kept on increasing, kept on knocking them back. Hardly surprising when you look at Sydney's median house price, 1.627 at the moment compared to Melbourne's 1,032,000. I mean, that is a difference of $595,000. Now, the couple managed to find a 4-bedroom house in Manor Lakes in Melbourne. Around $700,000 they spent meeting their needs with a backyard and a double garage. Sydney prices are expected to rise by between 6 to 8% by the financial year of 2025, while Melbourne's increase is projected much lower at between 0 and 2%, making Melbourne a much more affordable proposition and option for home buyers. So right now, off the back of that, let's go to Reece Beckley from Barry Plant in Werribee in Melbourne to discuss all of this. And a very good morning to you, Reece. Welcome to the Real Estate Breakfast this morning.
Thanks very much, Craig. Thanks for having me on.
So that's about the size of it. We'll get to those numbers in just a moment. But first, Werribee. Now, this is a suburb in Melbourne, and if you've never been to Werribee and you're wondering where that is, it is 32 k's southwest of Melbourne CBD, with a population, Reece, of about 50,000 people. Is that right?
That's exactly right, yeah. So it's one of the fastest growing municipalities at the moment within Victoria.
Yeah, so Werribee, we'll discuss Werribee in just a moment, but this article, you were featured in this article just talking about how many of these Sydney buyers, and I think you've been seeing them over the years, but none more so than right now. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're definitely seeing a lot of our Sydney buyers coming into the area, and obviously it's got a huge amount to do with affordability. I mean, as you mentioned, the median sale price in Sydney now is astronomical. For those younger generations, you know, somewhere between the age of 25, 35, first home buyer marketplace, it's just not viable for them to enter the Sydney market. And if they relocate to the west of Melbourne, Werribee, City of Wyndham, you are picking up a 4-bedroom, 500 square metre block, great family home for around that 700,000 mark. And so we've seen a flourish, especially in recent times with interest rates, of our Sydney investors, also Sydney buyers coming into the area.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a no-brainer, isn't it? And I think what people are surprised with, by the sound of it, when they do come from Sydney, is just the amount of property that they are getting, with the ability to spend more, but they are sort of settling, many of them, in that $700,000 to $800,000 mark. Is that a fair comment?
Absolutely. And I think our Sydney buyers also come with a little bit more gusto when it comes to competitive bidding and also negotiation, because as much as our Melbourne buyers may not want to pay the extra, the Sydney people see it as fantastic value when they compare to back home. We're really closing those deals in spades with the Sydney people coming across to Melbourne to relocate.
I guess that you're seeing it from the locals on the ground, because the locals probably don't have as much enthusiasm and gas in the tank as much as the Sydney ones, just coming back to that point where they see the value and they're probably quite aggressive and they knock out a lot of these local buyers as a result.
That's exactly right. We're finding that dealing with the Sydney buyers, the negotiation process is a lot better because they are seeing the value. Where you compare with your Melbourne buyers, they're getting knocked out by these Sydney investors. Again, when they compare back home, it's just fantastic value. I mean, we're 35 minutes out of the city, 35 minutes down to Geelong and the Surf Coast, and you're buying a 4-bedroom family home for a median sale price of $700.
And what about those days on market? Is the turnaround on those properties as a result of these buyers going out the door pretty quick?
Absolutely. I mean, we're seeing a lot of Werribee is predominantly a private sale marketplace, but we are experiencing at the moment around about 22 to 25 days as a median days on market. So they're not lasting long at all.
And you were just telling me off air that your percentage with the auctions is hovering around the 50% mark as a result of those private sales.
Absolutely. So the City of Wyndham, and it was reported by Domain for the first quarter of 2024, showed an auction clearance rate of 51.5%. So what we're seeing out here in the Western Corridor is that we are predominantly a private sale marketplace, with many of our buyers, first home buyers, looking to enter at an affordable range. We have a lot of cultural diversity as well. And those buyers are very comfortable with the private sale setting, adding subject to finance. But we are still seeing a huge amount of competition and some fantastic results.
All right, so we are talking to Reece there in Werribee, where it sounds pretty good. We'll come back and we'll talk more about Werribee, more about property after this.
Every week we present so much real estate. Know your property with us on the Real Estate Podcast.
Well, yesterday we were talking about these capsule pods that are available for rent in Sydney for $300 per week, and asked you whether or not you would consider living permanently in one of these pods and pay $300 a week. Got an email from Ivan in Parramatta there in Sydney, who said that he's just rented out a room for $325 within a brand new 4-bedroom house, and said that he worried about what living in a pod would do to somebody's mental health, which is a great point, Ivan. And he also said that sometimes we can get a little bit crazy with neighbours over the fence making a noise. How insane, Ivan said, would you get with somebody in the next capsule making a noise? So his main takeaway is find a normal space and protect your health at all costs. And it did make me think about these kitchlets that we have featured before, these little small spaces that have the shower and the toilet next to the kitchen, hence the name of the kitchlet. And these are probably starting to look quite good compared to a capsule. And just a reminder, if you would like to email through like Ivan, anything that's on your mind, you can do that. myrealestatepodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
From first-time home buyers to seasoned investors to breaking property news. Discover the stories behind the real estate.
We are talking to Reece Beckley from Barry Plant in Werribee there in Melbourne. Seems like a lot of Sydney buyers have decided to quit the market. And yes, if you have a look at that price between the two markets, as I mentioned, $595,000, it is an awful lot of money that you are saving, and getting a bit of land, getting a double garage as we talked about, and space to sort of move around in. Now, Reece, I just wanted to talk to you about the property tax. Now, what's been happening over the last couple of months with Victoria's new land tax? They say it could drive landlords out of the state, some commentators are saying. So what are you sort of seeing on the ground?
Look, we are seeing some of our landlords, partly due to the land tax and also due to just general, I suppose, living expenses, potentially look to pull out of the market. But at the same token, we're also seeing those interstate investors. So it's not just Sydney-siders coming in to relocate. They're also looking at our real estate for an investment to become a landlord. And that's got to do a huge amount with our affordability. So when you weigh up the affordability to enter the market versus what they're seeing in Sydney, obviously we are still getting great demand through our investor marketplace.
Now, for those people that are tuned in, why Werribee? Here you go. Here's your chance. Reece, why should people buy in Werribee? What has Werribee got going for itself?
Well, look, Werribee itself, it's a huge growth corridor. I think I mentioned before, it's one of the fastest growing areas in Victoria at the moment, the city of Wyndham as a whole. But when you look at where it's located, we are 35 minutes to Melbourne CBD. And then if you head the other direction, we're 35 minutes to Geelong and the Surf Coast with all the beaches down at Bells Beach and Torquay. So it's a fantastic location. It's very young, community-based, a lot of young families, a lot of diversity. It's a very vibrant community and the affordability certainly helps to set up your family.
Yeah, so you talk about the young families and talking about that diversity. Who else is buying in the region?
Yeah, look, we have a huge diversity. So there's a huge Muslim and Indian community in the area. So the area is very, very broad spectrum, which is fantastic. We have an array of different cultures and different food scenes throughout the community as well. Those communities are absolutely thriving within our area. And as a result, it's pushing our prices up. So we are seeing the area evolve, to the point that sometimes the area is growing at a very, very rapid rate. It's hard to keep up, but we try our best.
And just in terms of transportation, just over 30 minutes outside of the CBD, most people will say, well, for a metro city, that's nothing. But what's happening in terms of public transportation to get you into the city?
Yeah, so we've got a V line and a metro. The metro will take you straight into the city. There's also a V line which will go straight from the Manor Lakes, Wyndham Vale. There's another fresh suburb as the area expands in Melbourne, where there's a proposed new train station which will interconnect into the city also. There's an array of different options for those new communities.
Now, before I let you go, I know that first-time buyers are probably saying, hey, don't forget to ask about the unit median price in Werribee. So let's do that, because we've been talking about the houses, $700,000 to $800,000. What can you buy in Werribee, both new and also existing units?
Absolutely. So, look, the median sale price for, say, a two-bedroom unit in Werribee probably sits around about the $430,000 mark. So it is very, very affordable if you're looking at something established. If you're looking at something a little bit younger, you might maybe step it up to $450,000. We also have units. Watton Street, the main street of Werribee, is starting to evolve at the moment. The CBD of Werribee has been rezoned as an activity zone, where you can build up to 7 stories. So they're trying to redevelop it into more of a small type city vibe. We're seeing a lot of high-rise apartments kind of being constructed. So it really is taking off.
All right. And who would you like to say a good morning to, a shout out to, your team there in Werribee?
Absolutely, yeah. The Barry Plant Werribee City of Wyndham team, Rick and Donald and Mafid and the boys. Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us this morning on the Real Estate Breakfast, Reece. Good luck there in Werribee.
Thanks very much, Craig. Appreciate it.
From interest rates rising, a shifting landscape, rentals running hot, clearance rates, a tight rental market, we cover it all every morning from 6 a.m. on the Real Estate Breakfast.
Income stability, or how you're going to show that that is something that you've got and is ongoing. Obviously balancing that income with expenses, or what are your ongoing liabilities and how are they factored in.
Perhaps step over some of those common ones that people face during the mortgage application process in particular.
Being able to work through options like family guarantees or the government schemes, or potentially lenders that don't need as much of a deposit as others is also a really good option. And the other would be probably job security. We've seen a lot after COVID that people are changing roles, or in the times at the moment, potentially they've needed new jobs. So being able to work through if someone's changed roles.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.